Good afternoon. What I'm doing is a general timesheet how-to for the interns. So first, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to the web page, which is fbwctime.org. And once you log in to the web page, your username is gonna be your first initial, last name at fbwc.org. And then the password is going to be the same for everyone. It's capital P password 2020 exclamation mark. So once you log in, this is kind of what you're going to see. This is the general format of what everyone's timesheet looks like. So when you're entering your time, interns are always going to be 100% unrestricted. So what you're going to do is you're first going to click on new. Then you're going to first enter a service that would be a non-client service as our example. So as it shows right here, client, non-client service, we'll go continue to step 2 of 3. The grant you're going to select will always be unrestricted. Continue to step 3 of 3. Then what you're going to do is you're going to select the date. So today we'll go ahead and select the 5th. Then you're going to click off of it. You're always going to put your actual time. So for this one, we're going to pretend we worked an hour. But let's say it was an hour and 23 minutes. You would actually put the minutes right here. The activities that we have are hotline. Hotline is if you receive a call that is from somebody who is seeking services or is asking questions about our agency, but it is not a person who is already in the system as a client, which the database is called Osnium. The next is advocacy, and it's going to be FV, DV, Advocacy SA, or Advocacy FVDV and SA. Advocacy DV, that stands for Advocacy FV, stands for family violence. Advocacy DV is domestic violence, and Advocacy SA. This is when you're working with a client who has not been set up in the database and you're providing a service for them as advocacy. Direct service training is the training for volunteers that you basically receive over at admin. It's a 3-week course where everybody is learning information about domestic violence and sexual assault and how to work with our clients and how to have more education in regards to the services that we provide. The next is primary prevention. Primary prevention is if you were to go out into the community and you were to speak on behalf of the agency. Primary prevention, you would be basically changing the perspective of how people perceive domestic violence and sexual assault. Community education and outreach is if you were to go to the schools and speak on behalf of the agency and speak about domestic violence and sexual assault and dating violence. The next one is administration. Those are going to be services that you were doing that is basically like secretarial. So if you were answering the phone, making files, making copies, sending a fax, things of that nature would fall under administration. Meetings are if you have meetings as a team. So let's say that there's a meeting that's going to be about the clients and about housing. That would go under meetings. Supervision would basically be your one-on-one with your intern supervisor. Grant documentation would be basically putting information into your timesheet, entering data into the Osnium program, Anything of that nature would be considered grant documentation. And then general duties would be anything that didn't fall underneath the categories that were listed. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select, let's say we'll select advocacy. Then we're going to scroll down. Right here is where we have what's called a QB class, which is QuickBooks. So right here is where you're going to, depending upon your location, if you're at Rio Bend, you're going to put 100% for non-residential center. And if you're over at the shelter doing your internship, you're going to put 100% at the shelter. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just put 100% in as if we were over at Rio Bend because it's non-res. So we're going to click off of that. And we'll create the timesheet entry. Next, we're going to go to view list. And we're going to create an entry that would be for a client. So we would go on new. And then where it says non-client service, we're going to click on. And as you can see, there's a list of client numbers that drop down. These would be the Osnium numbers for our clients. So we try to make sure any client that comes through, their Osnium number is automatic. We have it entered into the system right away. So that way that service can be entered and provided for that client in the timesheet so that we get credit for those services. So what you would do is you would look up that person in Osnium and you would type in their number. So let's go ahead and do 105050. So as you can see, that number pops up. We're going to click on that number and now it's considered a client service. So we'd go continue to step 2 of 3. Again, your grant is going to be unrestricted. And where it shows the client attributes, this is what's going to tell you what the victimization is for that client and what their location is. So this client is sexual violence, domestic violence, and they're non-residential. So we're going to continue to step 3 of 3. We're going to pick the date. So we'll go ahead and pick today's date. You'll enter in your time. So let's say I worked with this client for an hour. And then this is where you're going to select your activity. So this is the part where you should have met with Allison and she would explain to you what all of the activity services are for Osnium under that grant. So because you're providing therapy, usually it's going to be individual counseling, support groups, or therapy that you're providing for your client. But again, it also depends on what their victimization is. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and select individual counseling. The HHSC type is always going to be shelter. It doesn't matter what location they're at. It's going to be shelter. The service location is going to, again, depend on where you're at. So if you're at Rio Bend, you would select non-residential center. And if you were at the shelter, you would select emergency shelter. So I'm going to go ahead and select non-residential center. The session status is how you provided that service. So this service would be face-to-face. And then the county, you're just going to type in FORT. And I should be pulling it up. FORT. There it is. Okay, Fort Bend. And then you're going to create timesheet entry. And then you'll have your entry that's created right there for your client service. So then you're going to go to view list. And then that takes you back to your detailed list of services that you have entered. So you're going to do that entry, or those steps to doing an entry. You want to do those every day so that way you don't get behind. So that way when the timesheets are due, those services can be rolled over into Osnium. So they are always due on the 16th and the 1st of the month, depending upon when it falls. So of course, if there's a weekend in between, it's going to be on that Monday after. But the rule basically is that it's due on the 16th and the 1st of the month. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me and I will get back with you as soon as I can, and we can go over the entries into the timesheet program. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks.